The rifle felt wrong in her hands, not because it was unfamiliar, not because the weight distribution was off, but because 23 pairs of eyes were watching, waiting for her to fail. Elena Vasquez stared down the 600-meter range at a target that should have been impossible to hit. The Montana mountains held their breath. The wind was gusting at 15 knots, shifting direction every few seconds. The other candidates had already failed this shot, every single one of them. Now it was her turn. Instructor Blackwood stood behind her with that predatory smile, the kind of smile a man wears when he thinks he's finally found your breaking point. "Take your time, Vasquez," he called out, his voice dripping with false encouragement. "No pressure, just the difference between staying in this program or catching the next bus home." She settled into position. The target was barely visible through the scope, a black dot against the mountainside that demanded perfection from 600 meters away. Her finger found the trigger. In the silence before the shot, a memory flashed through her mind. A rooftop in Aleppo, enemy muzzle flashes in the darkness below, Marines depending on her to keep them alive. Some shots you don't get to miss. The rifle cracked like thunder across the range. Through his binoculars, Blackwood's smug expression melted into disbelief. The bullet had found its mark, dead center, defying physics and probability. "Lucky shot," he muttered, but his voice had lost its edge. Elena cleared her weapon and stepped back from the line. Her face revealed nothing. Lucky had nothing to do with it. But as she caught the uncertain glances between the instructors, she realized her mistake. She'd shown them too much. Again. That night, as Elena cleaned her rifle in the dim barracks light, she ran her thumb over the worn polymer stock. Hidden beneath layers of military paint and countless training exercises were marks that told a different story. 27 precise notches, each one a life taken in the service of something greater. The other candidates thought they knew her, a determined woman trying to prove herself in a man's world. They had no idea they were sleeping next to a legend who'd already proven everything that mattered, in the only place where it truly counted. But legends, Elena had learned, made some people uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people made dangerous decisions. "Pack your gear, Vasquez, you're done." The words hit the barracks like a bomb. 1800 hours on a Tuesday that had started like any other. Elena looked up from cleaning her rifle, the weapon she'd been meticulously maintaining after another flawless performance on the range. Around her, 23 other candidates froze mid-motion, some folding laundry, others writing letters home, all of them suddenly aware that the axe could fall on anyone, at any time. "Sir," Elena's voice remained steady, but Thompson saw her knuckles whiten around the cleaning rod. Instructor Blackwood stood in the doorway with 2 other staff members, his face a mask of professional indifference. "You heard me. Administrative separation effective immediately." He held up an official-looking document. "Failure to meet program standards." The silence stretched like a taut wire. Martinez, a former Green Beret who'd struggled with the swimming portions, stared in disbelief. If Vasquez was getting kicked out, none of them were safe. She'd never failed a single evaluation, never quit during the punishment sessions, never even raised her voice in frustration. "What standard, sir?" The question came from Thompson before he could stop himself. Blackwood's eyes snapped to him. "You got something to say, candidate." Thompson's jaw worked, but he said nothing. Speaking up for a dismissed teammate was a fast track to joining them on the bus home. Elena caught his eye and gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head. "Don't make this worse for yourself." "Thought so?" Blackwood turned back to Elena. "You have 2 hours to pack. Transport leaves at 2000. Elena rose slowly, her face unreadable, though her mind raced through possibilities and calculations. She knew better than to show weakness in front of men like Blackwood. "Yes, sir." As he left, whispers filled the barracks like smoke. Elena packed her gear with the same precision she applied to everything. Her teammates watched, offering quiet support in the only way they knew how. "This is bullshit, Vasquez," Martinez muttered. "You're the best shot we've got." Alina paused, a folded shirt in her hands. Doesn't matter now, she resumed packing. What none of them knew was that somewhere in the administrative offices, a different conversation was beginning. A conversation that would change everything. But for now, Alina folded her clothes, rolled her socks, packed her gear, the way she'd done 100 times before in 100 different places. Syria, Jordan, Iraq, places where packing your gear sometimes meant the difference between life and death. An hour later, Instructor Hayes arrived at the barracks doorway. His expression was different from Blackwood's, more measured, more careful. "Vasquez, I need to inspect your gear before you leave." She laid it out on her bunk. Hayes checked each item carefully, methodically, his hands moving with the practiced efficiency of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. Finally, he picked up her rifle, the M4 she'd used exclusively since arriving at the compound. He examined it, checked the bore, inspected the mechanism. Then he froze. The clipboard dropped from his other hand, clattering against the concrete floor. Carved into the stock were 27 notches. Clean, deliberate, precise. Hayes had seen marks like these before, in real combat zones, on weapons carried by soldiers who'd walked through hell and counted the cost in bodies. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. Silence fell across the barracks. Everyone turned. The air shifted. Something had changed, though most of them didn't understand what. "Vasquez." Hayes's tone had changed completely. No longer instructor to trainee, but soldier to soldier. "Where did you serve?" "Syria, sir, for tour." "What unit?" "1st Battalion, 8th Marines, Scout Sniper Platoon." The words hit him like a physical blow. Hayes had heard stories, whispered tales in officer clubs and late-night briefings. A female sniper in Syria, the so-called Angel of Aleppo, who held the line when everything else was falling apart, who made impossible shots under impossible conditions, who kept Marines alive when death had already marked them. He looked at her differently now. She wasn't some recruit trying to prove herself. She was already proven, in the only crucible that truly mattered. "Blackwood," Hayes shouted toward the door. "Get here now." Footsteps pounded across the courtyard as Blackwood responded to the urgency in Hayes's voice. He burst through the door expecting some kind of emergency, but instead found Hayes holding a rifle, staring at Alina like he'd seen a ghost. "What's the problem, Hayes?" Hayes held up the rifle, pointed to the stock. "Count them." Blackwood squinted at the markings, his expression shifting from annoyance to confusion to dawning comprehension. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again without sound emerging. "Holy shit," Blackwood finally managed, his voice barely a whisper. "Holy shit." The two instructors stared at Alina. She stood at attention beside her packed gear, her expression unchanged. She'd known this moment would come eventually. The notches weren't something she advertised, but she'd never tried to hide them either. They were part of her story, part of who she was, part of what she carried. "Ma'am," Hayes said, and the word ma'am from an instructor to a candidate sent shockwaves through every person in the room. "We need to make some phone calls." Within 30 minutes of Hayes's discovery, the base transformed into a hive of frantic activity. Blackwood had disappeared immediately after seeing the rifle, his face ashen, his usual swagger completely absent. Hayes remained in the barracks, standing guard over Alina's gear like he was protecting evidence at a crime scene. The other candidates sat in stunned silence, finally understanding they'd been living alongside someone whose reputation preceded her into legend. "Nobody moves, nobody talks," Hayes commanded, his voice carrying an authority that brokered no argument. "This stays in this room until further notice." Alina continued packing with the same methodical precision, though she could feel 22 pairs of eyes boring into her back, questions hanging in the air like smoke. Finally, Thompson broke the silence with a whispered question that everyone was thinking. "Vasquez, how many Taliban did you actually kill?" She paused, a folded T-shirt in her hands. "ISIS," she corrected quietly. Not Taliban, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and various militia groups. She resumed packing. The number doesn't matter. What matters is that every shot protected American lives. But everyone in that room knew the number mattered. 27 confirmed kills wasn't just a statistic. It was 27 human beings who woke up one morning and never went home. 27 families who received notification. 27 lives ended by a woman who most of the world would never know existed. The weight of that reality settled over the barracks like a physical presence. The first phone call Hayes made was to his immediate superior, Lieutenant Colonel Davidson. The second was to the base psychiatrist, Dr. Rebecca Chun, who specialized in combat trauma assessment. The third was to the Classified Records Office, requesting an immediate pull of Elena Vasquez's complete military file. By 1930 hours, Davidson's office had become an impromptu war room. Papers spread across every surface. Coffee going cold in forgotten mugs. 3 senior officers trying to understand how they'd almost made a catastrophic mistake. "Tell me again what you saw," Davidson demanded, packing behind his desk like a caged animal. Hayes's hands were steady now as he described the notches. 27 confirmed kills, sir, carved into her personal weapon. I recognized the markings immediately. Standard practice for snipers in certain units. Each mark represents a verified kill. Davidson stopped packing. In his 18 years of command, he'd overseen thousands of candidates. Some were former Rangers, some Delta Force, some Navy SEALs transitioning between units. But a Marine sniper with 27 confirmed kills, that was a different category entirely. That was the kind of soldier who made enemies disappear, who changed the outcome of battles, who saved lives by taking them. And we dismissed her for what reason exactly? Blackwood swallowed hard. Unit cohesion concerns, sir, physical limitations, the standard. The standard bullshit, Davidson finished coldly. Get me her file now. While Blackwood scrambled to contact records, Dr. Chun arrived with a thick folder under her arm. She'd worked with enough combat veterans to recognize the significance of what they'd discovered. This wasn't just about military protocol. This was about a human being who'd carried an impossible burden, and whether anyone had bothered to ask what that burden cost. "Colonel," she said, spreading papers across his desk, "I pulled what I could from the medical database. This woman has been through hell." Elena's psychological evaluations lay across Davidson's desk like tarot cards revealing an uncomfortable future. 4 tour in Syria, 3 bronze stars, 1 with V device, Purple Heart, Navy Cross recommendation pending approval. The numbers told part of the story, but between the lines in the clinical language of military psychiatry was something else. A portrait of someone who'd seen the worst humanity had to offer, and somehow remained whole. 18 hours of continuous sniper cover under enemy fire, Davidson read aloud. Multiple confirmed kills at distances exceeding 1,200 meters, credited with saving the lives of an entire Marine platoon during the Battle of Raqqa. He looked up at Dr. Chun, and Blackwood thought she lacked the killer instinct. The classified file arrived 20 minutes later, delivered by a stone-faced sergeant who made everyone in the room sign for it with their security clearance numbers. What it contained went beyond Elena's official record. Mission reports, after-action reviews, classified intelligence assessments, the full scope of what she'd accomplished in Syria. "Jesus Christ," Davidson muttered, reading through the details. "This woman is the real deal." Dr. Chun leaned forward. "There's more. She graduated from MIT with a degree in applied mathematics, perfect psychological evaluations, no PTSD indicators, no substance abuse, no disciplinary issues. She's not just a decorated combat veteran. She's someone who processed that experience and came out the other side intact." Davidson checked the clock. 1955 hours, 5 minutes until the transport was scheduled to leave. "Blackwood, stop that bus, now." Transport 7 had just cleared the main gate when the radio crackled to life. Transport 7 returned to compound immediately. Authorization Davidson, priority Alpha. The driver's eyes met Alina's in the rearview mirror. She sat in the back, her gear stacked beside her, watching the Montana darkness roll past. "Ma'am, they're calling us back." Alina said nothing. She'd learned long ago that military bureaucracy moved in mysterious ways. Sometimes you got dismissed without explanation. Sometimes you got recalled without understanding why. You simply followed orders and tried not to think too much about what it meant. 20 minutes later, she stood in Davidson's office, facing a room full of officers and officials, the base psychiatrist, the head of training, Instructor Hayes, even Blackwood, though he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Vasquez," Davidson began, holding up her classified file. "Why didn't you tell us about your combat record?" She stood at attention. "Sir, I prefer to be evaluated on current performance, not past achievements. 27 confirmed kills, 3 Bronze Stars, Navy Cross recommendation. You didn't think that was relevant." "With respect, sir, my past doesn't change my ability to perform today's tasks. I came here to be challenged, to prove I could meet the standards, same as everyone else." Davidson set down the file, ran a hand through his graying hair. "We made a mistake, Vasquez, a significant one. I'm offering you immediate reinstatement with full honors." Alina stood perfectly still, her face revealing nothing. "Sir, what's changed? This morning I was unsuitable for the program. Tonight you want me back. The only difference is you now know my combat record." The observation hung in the air. Uncomfortable, true. Davidson had the grace to look ashamed. "You're right, your dismissal was based on assumptions, not performance." "Then I'll accept reinstatement on one condition." Davidson raised an eyebrow. Candidates didn't usually negotiate. "What condition?" "That you review and standardize your evaluation criteria. Future candidates should be assessed solely on their performance and potential, not on assumptions about their capabilities based on gender or appearance." The request was bold. It was also completely justified. Dr. Chun made a note on her pad, already thinking about how to implement such a review. Davidson allowed himself a small smile. This woman had just been wrongfully dismissed, had every right to be angry. Instead, she was thinking about the people who would come after her. "Agreed," he said. "Dr. Chun will lead the review process. We'll implement new protocols within 30 days. They shook hands. "Welcome back, Vasquez. This time, everyone will know exactly who they're training alongside." The next morning at 0400 hours, Hayes stood before the formation, Davidson beside him. The candidates assembled in the pre-dawn darkness, confused about why they'd been roused from sleep for an unscheduled briefing. Alina stood in formation like nothing had happened, like she hadn't been dismissed and recalled within a 12-hour span. "Yesterday," Hayes began, "we made an error in judgment. Today we correct it." He pulled out Alina's file. "Gunnery Sergeant Alina Vasquez, 4 combat tour in Syria, 27 confirmed kills, 3 Bronze Stars, Purple Heart, Navy Cross recommendation pending approval." The formation stood in stunned silence. Martinez's mouth hung open. Thompson looked like he'd been struck by lightning. These were achievements most of them only dreamed of, and they'd been bunking next to someone who'd already lived them. "The Angel of Aleppo," Davidson added, his voice carrying across the silent formation. "When Marines were pinned down and dying, when ISIS thought they had our people trapped, she was the divine intervention that sent the enemy straight to hell." Martinez whispered something that sounded like a prayer. Several candidates made the sign of the cross. They'd heard stories about the Angel of Aleppo, whispered tales in mess halls and briefing rooms, about a female sniper who operated like a ghost, who appeared when hope was lost, who saved lives from positions that should have been impossible to hold. They just never imagined she was real, let alone standing right next to them. Today's exercise will be different, Davidson continued. Gunnery Sergeant Vasquez will conduct advanced marksmanship training. You will listen. You will learn. You will show her the respect she's earned. At the range 2 hours later, Alina faced her classmates. They looked at her differently now, with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. She understood. She'd been the dismissed candidate yesterday. Today she was a legend. The cognitive dissonance had to be overwhelming. Combat shooting, she began, is nothing like range shooting. The targets shoot back. They move. They hide. They're trying to kill you and everyone you care about. She demonstrated techniques that no manual could teach. Shooting while moving, engaging multiple targets in rapid succession, making impossible shots under impossible conditions. But more than the technical skills, she taught them something deeper, something that couldn't be written down or quantified. The moment you hesitate, she said, is the moment your teammates die. You have to make the decision before the situation arrives. You have to know absolutely that when the time comes you'll pull that trigger, not for glory, not for medals, but because the alternative is watching good people die. Martinez raised his hand. The question came out hesitant. How do you live with it, the killing? Alina was quiet for a long moment. The range fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. You remember why you did it, she finally said. Every life I took was to protect someone else. Every shot meant another Marine went home to their family. That's the burden we carry. Not the taking of life, but the responsibility of protecting it. She paused, let the words sink in. Some nights I dream about them, the faces I saw through my scope, the men I killed. I'd be lying if I said it was easy. But then I think about the faces of the Marines who lived because I was there. The letters I got from families thanking me for bringing their sons and daughters home. And I know I made the right choice, even if it cost me something. The training continued through the afternoon. Alina pushed them harder than any instructor had before. But there was a difference now. She wasn't testing them to see if they'd break. She was preparing them for what was real, for what waited beyond the training compound, for the moments when everything they'd learned would be the only thing standing between life and death. 6 months passed. Montana winter gave way to spring. The mountain snow melted into rushing rivers. The candidates who'd started as strangers became a tight-knit unit, bound together by shared hardship and mutual respect. Of the 24 original candidates, only 18 remained. The others had washed out or voluntarily withdrawn, unable or unwilling to meet the standards. Graduation day arrived with clear skies and a warm breeze. Families filled the wooden bleachers. Children waved small flags. The ceremony was simple but dignified. Each graduate called forward to receive their certificate and unit assignment. When Davidson called Alina's name, the crowd erupted in applause. Her classmates stood. Their families stood. Even the instructors stood. Gunnery Sergeant Alina Vasquez, Davidson announced, graduate with highest honors. As she stepped forward to receive her certificate, Davidson leaned in close. The angel of Aleppo walks among us, he said quietly. God help our enemies. Alina smiled, a rare, genuine smile. Sir, our enemies should be worried about the angels we're training here. There are going to be a lot more of us. In the audience, Dr. Chun made notes. Her evaluation process review had resulted in sweeping changes, new protocols, standardized criteria, a system designed to identify merit regardless of who possessed it. Already, 3 more women had entered the program, inspired by Alina's story, determined to prove that excellence had no gender. A young girl in the crowd, maybe 10 years old, watched Alina with stars in her eyes, dreaming of the day when she too might wear the uniform, might serve something greater than herself, might become an angel in her own right. As families rushed forward to congratulate the graduates, Alina stood quietly, looking at the Montana mountains that had tested and ultimately strengthened her. She'd come here as a Marine seeking a new challenge. She was leaving as something more, a symbol, a reminder that excellence knows no gender, that courage comes in many forms, that angels walking among us are often the ones we least expect. The angel of Aleppo had found her wings again. This time, she was ready to soar. And in the quiet spaces between celebration, in the pauses between handshakes and photographs, a truth settled over the compound like morning dew. Some people speak their worth loudly. They demand recognition. They fight for every acknowledgement. But others simply do the work. They carry the burden. They make the impossible shots and save the lives and carve 27 notches into rifle stocks without ever asking for applause. Elena Vasquez had never needed anyone to believe in her. She'd already proven everything in the deserts of Syria, on rooftops in Aleppo, in moments when hesitation meant death and certainty meant survival. The training compound was just another test, just another chance to demonstrate what she'd always known. That dignity doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand validation. It simply exists, quiet, steady, unshakable. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts.